Risk management is an important part of any SDLC, and this is especially true in regulated industries such as life sciences. And in Jira Cloud, you have several options for managing your risk directly in Jira. So how to make the right choice? In this video, I'll share 3 options for managing your risk directly in Jira with the pros and cons for each so that you can make the choice that's right for you. My 3 favorite solutions are Risk Register by Project Balm, Risk Manager Plus from SoftComply, and plain old Jira automation from Atlassian. Let's look at Risk Register first. Risk Register is a third-party app that you can install from the Atlassian marketplace, and I do believe it is the most widely installed dedicated risk management tool in Jira. And in my opinion, this app provides the best overall value for its price. These are the prices as of fall 2023. Now let's look at a quick demo. Right now I am looking at my backlog, and if I open a Jira issue and scroll down to the risk assessment panel, this is the Risk Register app, and you can see it in its most basic use case. It gives you a traditional risk assessment with probability and severity and an overall risk rating, and you can calculate these for both your inherent risk and your residual risk. If I enter into this to modify the values, you can see that these risk ratings will update in real time based on the values that I select. If you want to do something a little bit more advanced, administrators can configure these risk assessments to change the values that are available, change the labels of the values, as long as you stay within a 2-dimensional or 2-variable risk assessment. You can configure that risk assessment however you need to match your business processes. One of the other nice features this app provides is the ability to view risk registers. So if I select risks from my project menu, this opens a different portion of the Risk Register app, and you can see a list of risk registers that are configured in your project, and you can create as many registers as you'd like. In this example, I've created 2 separate registers, one for safety-related risks, another for security-related risks, and then inside the register configurations, you can use JQL to determine which items belong in which register. So I've created a custom field to choose between security and safety for my risk items. And now when I open a risk register, this one will give me all of the risks associated with safety, product safety, and then another register would give me all of the risks I've identified associated with product security. And again, you can configure as many registers as you would like in a single project. Again, Risk Register is my favorite solution for basic use cases. We saw that it's affordable, straightforward, easy to use, and gives you all the basic features that you need: initial risk, residual risk, ability to create risk registers, and ability to configure your matrix. But it has 2 disadvantages that may lead you to another solution. The first limitation is that it has limited configuration capabilities for your risk calculations. You will not be able to use it for a 3-dimensional or more risk assessment, that is, a risk assessment with 3 or more input values, and you will not be able to use it for formula-based risk assessments. The second limitation is that you can only associate 1 risk model per Jira project. So we already saw that I was able to configure a safety risk assessment and a security risk assessment in a single project, but both of these risk assessments must use the same model. That is, they must use the same matrix. You can't use one risk matrix for your safety risk assessment and a second risk matrix for your security risk assessment, even though using different models for different use cases is common. And that leads us to our second option, which is Risk Manager Plus from SoftComply. Like Risk Register, Risk Manager Plus is also a third-party app that you can install from the marketplace. And while Risk Register is a great general purpose risk assessment tool, Risk Manager Plus is a specialized tool for risk management in regulated industries, specifically life sciences, and therefore it is by far the most full-featured tool that I have found to date. So let's do a quick demo of Risk Manager Plus. Here I have a risk hazard from my requirement specification. This is related to security. And if I scroll down to the risk values section, this will appear similar to the risk register app, where I have an initial risk assessment and a current risk assessment or residual risk. And I can update my input values, severity and probability, and the risk manager app will calculate my values in real time with a risk score based on the associated risk assessment. So now I am looking at a different issue from the same Jira project. This is a user requirement in my requirement specification. And for example, if I wanted to do a line item risk assessment on my user requirements, you can see I can set up a different risk assessment than I used for my hazard analysis. And so this is demonstrating two advanced configuration capabilities of Risk Manager Plus, which I find very helpful. First, I was able to configure an advanced risk formula, this time a three-dimensional risk assessment, which is not possible in other risk management apps. And also, I'm able to configure different risk models for different use cases, all in the same Jira project. I'm unaware of any other dedicated risk management apps that support multiple risk models within a single Jira project. Now suppose we want to report on our project risks. We can go to the risk management item in our project menu, and we can report on risk using a model view or a table view. If we select the model view, and this will give you a graphical view of your project risks with your Jira issues grouped into the risk matrix based on their risk assessments, and this view can be exported to PDF. And if you have multiple risk models configured in your project, like I do, you can view and report on all of your models in this way. The other view is the risk table view, and this will look more like the risk register view that we saw in the last app. And this will give you a more line item report of your risk. And these reports are configurable, and you can create a different table for each of your models or multiple tables per model based on different filter settings. You can see in this view, shows I have a lot of risk to assess. Now, this short demo barely scratched the surface of all of the capabilities that are built into Risk Manager Plus. Like I said, it is an absolutely full-featured risk management app that is designed specifically for the life sciences industry. So I encourage you to go to the vendor's website to learn more about everything this app can do. But for all its functionality, there are two disadvantages to this app that, depending on your use case, may discourage you from using it. The first disadvantage is the pricing. By Atlassian marketplace standards, this is an expensive app. Now, in all fairness, you'll pay a lot more money for a life science risk management solution outside of Jira. So I am in no way saying this price is unfair. I'm just warning you, it's probably more expensive than the other apps you're already paying for. The second disadvantage to Risk Manager Plus is where it stores its risk values. Both your initial and your calculated risk values are all stored inside the app itself, rather than inside custom fields in Jira, which is how the Risk Register app did things. And where this may become a problem for you is when you're reporting on your risk. Now, the vendor provides a lot of great off-the-shelf reporting features, more than what I demoed in this video. But if you're using a separate third-party app for your reporting, such as Exporter, or if you're doing risk-based testing and you want to see your risk values inside your testing tool, you're going to find it very challenging because these risk values stored in the Risk Manager app are not going to be accessible to that other third-party software. So that limitation brings me to the third solution that you might consider for building a risk assessment feature in Jira, and that is using Jira's native automation itself. So let's take a look at that. So to build a risk assessment natively in Jira, we're first going to create some custom fields for a risk assessment by going into Settings, Issues, and custom fields. And for this demo, if we filter on the phrase risk assessment, we can see I've created the 5 risk assessment fields necessary for a basic GAMP5 risk assessment, which is the 3-dimensional risk assessment we saw earlier. And for the 3 input values, detectability, probability, severity, I made a single select list with high, medium, low for the options. And for the 2 calculated values, class and priority, I'm using a read-only text field so that users do not enter these values directly. They must calculate them through the input values. And the second piece to creating our native risk assessment is to create an automation rule for calculating those values. And if I select automation in my project settings, we will see the single rule that I created. I have a rule titled calculate risk. And this rule consists of a single trigger with 2 large if-else structures. So first, the automation trigger is any change to our input fields. So anytime a user changes the risk probability, severity, or detectability fields, then this rule will trigger. And now we have 2 large if-else structures. And so the first if structure sets my risk class value, and risk class is an input into risk priority. So the second large if structure evaluates the calculated risk class with the user inputted detectability and then selects a risk priority based on the second matrix inside the GAMP5 risk assessment. And in both of these if-else structures, the last statement is an else statement that simply blanks out my priority field or my risk class field up above. And this is in case one of the values is missing, i.e. there's no probability or severity or detectability, then my calculation will show a blank value. So let's do a quick demo of our automated risk assessment. Right now I'm viewing a requirement in my specification. And if I want to do a line item risk assessment, like I did in the last demo, I can scroll down to my risk fields and select a severity and a probability. And then if I wait for the automation to run, we should see a risk class is assigned. There it is. And if I add detectability to my assessment, then we should also see the risk priority update once the automation runs. And there we have our calculated risk priority. And now if I want to report on my risks in a register view, like we did with the marketplace apps, we can use a basic Jira filter. And because our risk values are stored directly in Jira as regular Jira fields, we're able to report on them anywhere we expect to. The primary use case where I recommend using Jira automation to build a risk assessment is for risk-based testing. And the reason is because Jira automation can solve 2 of the problems that we saw with our marketplace apps. Using Jira automation, we can configure as complex as a risk formula as necessary. For example, configuring the 3-dimensional GAMP5 risk assessment. And it also allows us to store our risk values directly in Jira, where they are accessible to third-party reporting tools and third-party testing apps like X-Ray, which is critical for the risk-based testing use case. However, there are a couple of disadvantages to Jira automation, which is why I still recommend using one of the third-party apps in most use cases. The first limitation is that Atlassian has changed their pricing model for Jira automation rules, and this solution may be cost prohibitive to anyone using Jira Free or Jira Standard. And so this solution might only be feasible to Jira Premium and Jira Enterprise users. The second limitation is just the user friendliness. Because you have to wait for Jira automation to run after changing a field value, sometimes there is a considerable lag between the user changing a value and the automation rule running, and that can cause some user confusion. And that's it. We just saw 3 solutions for managing risk directly in Jira. We saw the Risk Register app, which was the easy-to-use, general-purpose app suitable for most risk management use cases. We saw the much more advanced Risk Manager Plus, which is specifically designed for risk management in the life sciences industry. And we saw Jira Automation, which, while not the prettiest, works very well for risk-based testing. I hope you found this video helpful. If you'd like to see more, go to www.agile-innovations.tech. Thanks for watching.